Hello, welcome to the Jefferson Township Assessment Appeal Workshop from the Cook County Assessor's Office, Commissioner Degnan and Alderman Martin. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. We'll let people finish filing into the room. We will have a presentation for you on some of the interesting things about the Jefferson Township reassessment. Some important things to know about the property tax system. Good questions on how and when to appeal will be things we'll tackle. We'll also talk a little bit about exemptions, and if you are missing exemptions on your tax bill, how you can still apply for those. So we'll just give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Note that you can leave some questions in the Q&A. We also have a chat function going as well. After the main presentation, we will take questions. You can offer just if you have general questions or if you have specific questions about something in your reassessment notice. Those are good questions to ask. We can stay until we get all those questions answered. And if we need to do any follow-up, we can do that too. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A. Leave that question there and we will either answer it within the Q&A box, or if we think it's a question that a lot of other folks would have, we will answer it live. And with that, I'm going to give it over to Commissioner Degnan for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for putting on this very informative presentation tonight. My name is Bridget Degnan. I am the Cook County Commissioner in the 12th District, which covers much of Chicago's north and northwest side. I know that property taxes can be a source of anxiety for many of our friends and neighbors, so I'm happy to make sure that along with Scott in the Assessor's Office, demystify some of the issues that you guys might have questions on. And I want to ensure also that nobody is paying a penny more than the law requires. So after this evening, I encourage you to contact my office if you have any questions, or contact the Assessor's Office if you have any questions. You know, that we have one-on-one office hours throughout the entire property tax appeals timeframe into the fall. So please give me a call at 773-283-7873, or you can email me at district12@cookcountyil.gov. We are here to serve. My whole office is here to help and support in any county-related issues, not just limited to property tax appeals. So we'll learn a lot this evening. One other thing I wanted to mention is a large source of our attention in my office isn't just about you know, the operations of the county, but we work a lot on issues relating to the environment. And we have a great event coming up soon that I want to plug. It's called Fall Nature Fest. It is in LaBaugh Woods at Cicero and Foster Avenue, and it is on September 18th from noon to 3. I hope you guys will all come out and join us for some great fun in the forest preserves. We'll be there, but as I mentioned before, we do have office hours between 10 and noon. Every day in our office. You can swing by at 4253 North Milwaukee Avenue, and we will help you with your property tax appeal. So thank you for being here, and I hope you find this program to be valuable. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, and a few opening comments from Alderman Martin.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate your office taking the lead on putting this together. And thank you, Commissioner Degnan, for the continued great work and relationship that our offices have. A few quick things that I wanted to note. One, that my office is going to be hosting in-person appointments with Commissioner Degnan's team in the coming weeks. We're doing 12 to 3 p.m. on Wednesday, September 8th. And 9 to 12 p.m. on Monday, September 13th. These are 15-minute appointments, so 24 appointments in total. We will be sending information out as quickly as we can in terms of registration links. Please don't hesitate to contact our office, info@aldermanmartin.com or 773-868-4747 for additional information. Beyond that, I just wanted to note, piggybacking on Commissioner Degnan's point, we want to make sure at the city level that we're continuing to find more progressive revenue options when it comes to maintaining the services that people have come to expect, as well as expanding services to capture things that folks increasingly need, including but not limited to things relating to the pandemic, so that we're not relying on property taxes in an increasing way. We're here to help support folks and escalate questions to the commissioner's office, to the assessor's office. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. We're here to assist you however we can, whether it concerns property tax appeals or anything else. I really appreciate your time, and thanks again for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks to both of you for having us out. We depend on great relationships with elected officials to put us in touch with your constituents and make sure we get any questions answered. So I want to thank you for continuing to be of assistance to our office to make sure we're getting all the questions answered. So thanks for bringing us out. Even when out is really inside, when we're coming from our homes, we're really glad to continue to do these types of things, even under these kinds of circumstances. Briefly, my name is Scott Smith. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with the Cook County Assessor's Office. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the data-driven things that went into how we created assessments. But I also want to note that my colleague, Hector Dominguez, is a member of our outreach team and will be talking to you after my part of the presentation about appeals, about the exemptions, about some of the kind of nuts and bolts of what goes into your property tax bill. And we'll make sure to get all your questions answered. I know folks want to know about maybe they need to fix what they see as an error on their assessment. Maybe there's something about their tax bill that is of concern to them right now. And we'll get into all that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about some of the data-driven aspects of assessments, because there's three things you really need to know about assessments. First of all, by law, assessments should reflect market prices. And markets have changed over the past 3 years. If you've been keeping up with any kind of information in the residential housing market over the last year or so, you may have seen information about how assessments that may relate to market value would mean that assessments have been going up. And the reason assessments have been going up is because housing values have been going up. A lot of folks are buying new properties because for whatever reason, they've been spending more time at home and thinking that they need more space or a different kind of space. Maybe they need more space to have a home office. So a lot of properties are getting bought up. A lot of people are changing whatever their home situation is. And so even if you haven't changed anything about your property, the types of homes similar to yours are trading on the real estate market. And that means that we have new sales data about homes like yours. And assessments are really just about what kind of real estate market data is out there about homes like yours. That's how we figure out how much your home is worth now. So what you can see here is a little bit of a detail on those different market prices. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, but these show you the sort of, I would call that maybe a beige to an orange, maybe there's a little fuchsia in there. Those are the lower end of the housing market. And you see the area of Jefferson Township is really mostly in that kind of $250,000 to $500,000 market value. And that's a single family residential home. It's not a condo and it's not the 2 to 6 flats. But you do see on the far eastern end of Jefferson Township, you do see some of those higher value homes in the $750K to $1 million, and even some $1 to $2 million homes in there. So you can kind of see roughly where we have different kinds of data on market prices. So a lot of people say, hey, I don't live in the eastern part. Are you valuing my home differently from, the folks that are more on the eastern end? The answer is yes. So this gives you a little bit of a sense of how we use market data to determine the assessments. So let's go back to slide 2 for just 1 second, because there's 2 more things that we want to let you know about. So first, assessments of everyone in your neighborhood and in Chicago are interconnected. So what does that mean? That means you need to be concerned not just about your assessment being fair, but everyone's assessment being fair. A lot of folks think the increase in their assessment is directly related to an increase in a future tax bill. Now, assessments this year will be reflected on next year's second installment tax bill. That's the one that comes out in the summer. So what people often think is that if I have a 30% or a 40% increase in my assessment, that means my taxes are going to go up 40%. And that's not the case, because what can happen is other people's assessments can go up more, meaning they have taken on a greater share of the property tax burden in your area. It can also be that certain categories of properties have gone up more. For instance, what we've seen in the past is that some commercial assessments have been lower than they should have been. And Assessor Fritz Kagi has been working very hard with his staff to make sure that we are assessing all properties at the correct market value. So, for example, if certain kinds of high-end commercial properties have gone up more in the past 3 years than residential homes, then those commercial properties would be taking on more of the property tax burden, which would mean that their taxes might go up more, whereas you as a residential homeowner might only see a small increase. In the last two reassessment cycles in the north suburbs and in the south and west suburbs that have happened over the past 2 years, we have only seen about a 1% increase in the average residential tax bill. And some people are surprised by that because they've got assessments that say, hey, this assessment went up 50, 60%. Maybe you have the type of home that people have been buying a lot of over the past year. Maybe you have the perfect kind of house to, wait out a pandemic in because you've got space for a home office. And maybe a lot of those properties are trading on the market, even though you haven't done anything new to your property. That would mean that your assessment will go up because homes like yours are going up in your local market. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the increase in your assessment is going to lead to the same increase in your property taxes. Now, a lot of people want to know, well, what is my property tax bill going to look like based on this assessment? And the answer is that right now we don't know, because we still have about 5 townships left to reassess in Chicago, north and south, which mostly take into account the downtown area, Lakeview, Hyde Park, and I'm forgetting one, and I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but we have a handful of those still left to go. And until we know how properties throughout Chicago have changed, we don't know how that share of the tax burden has changed. So I know that's frustrating because people want to know, this assessment means what in my tax bill. Unfortunately, we don't have those answers yet. We won't know until later in the year, once we finish processing appeals and once the Board of Review finishes processing appeals. At that point, the clerk sets the tax rate and some other things get put into place, like we figure out the impact of exemptions, and then you get a tax bill. It's an incredibly complicated system, unfortunately. And, I obviously wish it wasn't, because I know nobody likes paying property taxes. But the important thing to know is that assessments just divide up the property tax bill that's due. And property taxes come from our city of Chicago that sets its levy, the Chicago Public Schools that sets its levy, libraries, park districts, all of them say we need this amount of money in order to pay for the different essential services. And those get funded through property taxes. So all of that gets done this year, and the calculations for it come out next year. But a good rule of thumb can be that if you are lower than kind of the median value, that would mean that you probably are going to see a minimal impact of a tax increase. The other thing to keep in mind is, as you hear about other townships coming out and their assessments, you might want to see kind of what the split between residential and commercial taxes are looking like. And we'll get to that here in just a second. So let's go to the next slide. We talked about this map of the different home values. So just something to keep in mind, all of this data is online. We'll talk about where you can find that on our website in a little bit. But let's talk about the ways in which Jefferson Township grew. So here's an important thing to keep in mind. On slide 4, you want to look at the ways in which residential and non-residential or commercial property grew. So I talked about how assessments of all properties in Chicago are interconnected and how an increase in new properties assessment doesn't mean the same increase in property taxes. So we also talked about if other assessments go up more, then yours might not change much. So here's the thing to keep in mind. Let's look at this chart. So for residential, we saw the total assessed value of Jefferson Township go from 4.2 billion to 4.8 billion. So a big number. Obviously, that's a lot to get your head around. But we also saw that commercial property, 1.3 billion to 2.4 billion. So that was a pretty significant increase in the value of commercial property. So what we're looking at here is there was a lot more commercial property that kind of came online in Jefferson Township in this last reassessment. The percentage wise, we saw commercial property go up more. So it's very likely that if these assessments stick, that there may be more burden taken on by commercial property owners in Jefferson Township. We'll talk a little bit more about what the impact of taxes will be from these values. But an important thing to keep in mind is these increases are due to a couple things. First, you might have new buildings, new apartments, maybe there's a couple hotels, maybe there are new houses being built. All of those new properties mean an increase in the assessed value of Jefferson Township. But also, we're looking at how much the market has increased for these types of properties as well. And so that's going to also mean increases in value. Now, the other good thing to know about when assessed value goes up is that if your assessed value of an area goes up, that ultimately means that tax rates can come down. The reason for that is you've got more property to kind of spread out the property tax levy. So essentially, more people often, or more properties, or more expensive properties are starting to spread out the property tax burden. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. When you see the total assessed value of an area go up, that usually means that it can help pull down the tax rates. So let's look in detail about some of the assessments in Jefferson Township on the next slide. So what are we seeing for sale prices? Again, we talked about how assessments are really a measure of sale prices in the market. So the median sale price of last year for a single family home was about $350,000 in, that says West Chicago, should actually say Jefferson Township. That's a typo. But these numbers are correct. $350,000 was the median for single family homes and $190,000 for condos. So remember, when I was talking about that median before, it's something to keep in mind. Assessor's office estimated that 2021 market values are between $170,000 and $420,000 for single family homes and about $140,000 to $200,000 for condos. That's about the high and low part of the middle of the bunch. We looked at that map earlier and you saw some of those $1 million and $2 million homes. That's really on the upper end. But if you're looking in just the middle range of prices, the middle range of prices looks to be about $170,000 to $420,000 for single family homes and about $140,000 to $200,000 for condos. So if you're right about in that middle, you're kind of where the average is. If you are within that average, within that median, it's a good likelihood that you're not going to see a really significant impact on your tax bill from an increase in your assessment. So let's say you were at $200,000 on your assessment last year, or really from the last assessment, which was 2018. Let's say you went up as high as 300,000. You're still in that median range. So it's really important to note that if you're in that middle range, there are other properties that are worth significantly more than yours, and they may be taking on more of the tax burden. And again, this doesn't even include those increases in commercial. And so because we're seeing a lot of bigger increases in commercial assessed value in Chicago, we are likely seeing a pattern of commercial properties taking on more of the tax burden. So I know it's always very nerve-wracking when you open up your assessment and you see a really big increase, but that's probably keeping track with the market that we saw last year, which was really honestly just a very, very surprising increase. We are right now in the middle of the International Association of Assessing Officers Conference. It just so happens to be taking place here in Chicago. And one of the big topics is how much residential homes have gone up in the past year. These are folks who professionally appraise and assess homes. And this is really nothing like most of them have seen for a good long time. So it's important to keep this in mind. If you're in that median space, you're probably going to see a very minimal impact of an assessment increase from your tax bill. But the biggest important thing is we want to get your assessment right. That means we want to get your market value right. And it's possible we've made mistakes. If you have a unique home, if it has unique interior, if you, for example, are a type of home that is a little harder for us to assess, sometimes those can be older homes, then maybe we made an assumption in our models about your home that doesn't ring true with you. If you look at that market value and you think you can't sell your home for that in this current market, if you say are one of those folks that's always going on Zillow or Redfin, you have a pretty good idea of where your house is in relation to everybody else. If you think you can't sell your home for that, then you have a very good basis for an appeal. And we'll talk a little bit more about what makes for a good appeal in Hector's portion of the presentation. So let's go to the next slide. And one thing we always hear about is, it's fine. You're telling me that my assessment might go up, but it doesn't mean my taxes are going up. How do I actually know if you're doing a good job in assessing my home? Well, here are some data to help show that. There are some specific types of metrics that we use to determine whether our properties are fair or whether our assessments are fair or not. We measure ourselves against those folks I mentioned, the IAAO. They have specific industry standards for what constitutes a high quality assessment. And on the whole, we met all three industry standards for high quality assessments on measures of fairness and equity. Essentially what that means is in Jefferson Township, based on our modeling, overall, we did a really good job of making sure that they were considered, consistent with the market, but also that we were using the same types of modeling for all kinds of different homes. And we actually increased the fairness measures when we look at 2021 versus 2018. So we actually did a little bit better, and you can kind of see that we've got more of our median, top third, and bottom third falling into the range of the green. The bottom third of homes are consistently the hardest to assess because there's usually things about it in the inside. I noticed somebody in the chat was talking about their home had settled maybe. There are unique things that happen inside a home that are really hard for us to measure. But we actually did a really good job at assessing homes overall. Now, just because we did a good job overall, does that mean that every single assessment is correct? It doesn't. It's possible we made some mistakes. It's possible we made assumptions that overestimated the value of your home. And that's why we're here. We want to make sure that we're talking to you about how this work is done and how to actually appeal. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. Let's go into the next slide. Okay, so I was talking earlier about the balance between commercial and residential. I was talking about making sure that you look at what it means that commercial assessments are going up as a percentage more than residential. So at the end of the Jefferson Township initial assessment in 2018, 76% of Jefferson's total assessed value was residential, with the other 24% comprised of non-residential and multifamily properties. So that's all your commercial stores, that's your big apartment buildings, that kind of stuff is what we talk about when we call properties non-residential. You've got quite a bit of residential homes in Jefferson Township. Some townships have more of a commercial property base, but most of the assessed value in Jefferson are residential homes, and we include in that small apartments, so 2 to 6 flats. Anything 7 units or less is considered a residential apartment building. But when we did the reassessment here in 2021, we found that the total assessed value of Jefferson Township was 66% residential and 34% non-residential. You saw that significant increase in the total assessed value in a previous slide. And what that means is we think that commercial properties have taken on a greater portion of the tax burden this year than they did back in 2018. So again, when people see an increase in their assessment, does that mean it's going to be the same increase on your tax bill? It doesn't. In the past 2 years, we've done 2 reassessments and we've seen significant increases in assessed values, but residential homeowners have on the average only had an increase of about 1%. Now, does that mean there weren't some folks that did go up more than that? That's certainly the case, but 1% was the average for residential homeowners. And that's because we saw really big increases in commercial values because of previous underassessment. So it's important to keep in mind that we are still processing appeals, not just in Jefferson Township, but also in some other townships. And we still have 5 other townships yet to assess in the city of Chicago. So we're going to continue to get data on this. These percentages will likely change a little bit, but we'll publish some numbers at the end that'll show you where the balance between commercial and residential stands at the end of the assessment cycle in our office. Now, the Board of Review also takes appeals, so this will change those numbers as well. But at this point, we believe more of the burden of property taxes are on commercial properties. So finally, just to wrap up here, and I'm going to pass the baton over to Hector, and I'm going to jump into the Q&A and the chat and answer some questions. I just want you to know that we have all of this data and a lot more on our website at cookcountyassessor.com. If you go to our website and then go to the menu that says data, then a drop-down menu will show up and you click on valuation reports, and you can click specifically on Jefferson Township to see reporting on single family homes, on 2 to 6 flat apartments, and on condos. And we even show you, if you're interested, the information on commercial properties as well. It's a lot more complicated than residential. It's a completely different type of modeling, but we do provide that information because we believe in transparency. You should know exactly how we're getting these numbers. If you want to dig into a little more detail about the fairness of our assessments, we also provide that too. So that was a lot of data. I'm sure there's questions in the chat and I'll get to answering some of those. But I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Hector Dominguez, who is going to cover, I think, what a lot of folks are here to hear about, which is appeals and exemptions. So take it away, Hector.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hector Dominguez. I am here on behalf of the Assessor's Office. So what we want to do is we want to talk about the responsibilities of the Assessor's Office. It is our job to accurately value 1.9 million different properties. That's almost 2 million different properties. The values, as Scott spoke earlier, of these properties are not determined on an individual basis. It's a mass appraisal system. Another thing our office does is provide discounts or exemptions. We're going to get there, but first what I want to do is talk about what you need to have if you want to file an appeal. First thing first, appeals are always free with the Assessor's Office. You will need an email address. This is the best way for you to do this. We have a calendar that I'm going to show you in a little bit where it lets you know where your township is, when your township opens, and the deadline for your township. When you are in your 30-day window, that is when it is best for you to apply for this appeal. You can start your appeal, you can edit the appeal, you can save it, you can modify, you can add attachments, you can do all of those things. And we also want to announce that we have a brand new comparable properties tool that we want to show off as well. Just like Scott said, how will this appeal affect your tax bill? So the bill that you just received has absolutely nothing to do with the appeal that we're going to be doing now. This appeal is for the 2021 value. You won't pay those taxes until next July or next summer, I'm going to say, for your second installment tax bill for next year. If you appeal and there is a reduction, that's when you will see it. If you appeal and you do not win your appeal, absolutely nothing will happen. We get this question all the time. If I appeal and I lose, will you raise my tax bill? Absolutely not. So now there are multiple reasons why someone may appeal. These are the 3 most common. The first one is lack of uniformity. That just means Scott and myself live in the same area. house built by the same person, same size, same color, same make, same construction, same everything. But for whatever reason, Scott's home is less than mine, even though they are the same. And I want to know why my home is not uniform to everybody else's that is just like mine. The next reason is overvaluation. There's no way my house is worth this much. If my house was worth this much, I would sell it to you right now or the bank. That's probably everybody here. And then the next one is incorrect property description, also known as property description error. That just means there is a factual error. That means our office says you have a building with 6 apartments or less, but you really have a single family home. Or our office says you have a condo, but you really have a single family home. Let me continue. What factors affect your tax bill? Scott already went over this, but just very quickly, your assessment, the exemptions, which we're going to talk about in a second, your local township tax rate, which Scott already spoke about as well, the levies in your area, so the school districts, the park districts, the libraries, the total assessment of your town, all of those things play a role. What are exemptions? Exemptions are discounts on your property taxes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different exemptions. The first one is homeowners. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, I had to get a cough out. I didn't want to cough on the thing. Homeowner exemption. That's for anyone who owns and occupies their property as of January 1 of the taxable year. Senior citizen and senior freeze, those are based on age. So as long as you were born in 1955 or before, you qualify as a senior. For the senior freeze, you cannot make more than $65,000 as a total household income. The next one is persons with disability. This is for anyone who has a disability. We give you an application, you take it to your doctor fills it out on your behalf, and then you submit it back to our office. Returning veterans, this is for anyone who's coming from active duty. This is for the year you return and for 1 year after. The next one is veterans with disability. This is for any veteran that has a service-connected disability of 30% or higher. 30 to 49%, you get X removed off of your tax bill. 50 to 69%, you get X removed off your tax bill. 70 to 100%, you don't pay property taxes at all. Long-time exemption, this is for anyone who owned and occupied their property January 1, 2010 up until now. Your income is less than 100,000 as a total household income. And then your equalized assessed value has increased significantly depending on where you live at. Each township is different. The home improvement exemption is an exemption that we have that you don't have to apply for. As long as you apply for the oh my gosh. When you're making improvements on your home, I'm gonna have my mind's going blank right now, sorry. The permits, as long as you apply for the permits correctly, our office will be notified, and then we will go ahead and enroll you into that exemption if you qualify. This covers you for any improvements on your property for up to $75,000. Anything greater than that, you will be responsible for. This is a sample tax bill. The portions in red is what we want to draw your attention to. The red portion under tax calculator, that is the important information. This entire tax bill is super important. There's an actual dollar to the cent breakdown above the red portion, but we want to draw your attention here. So if you notice on the right-hand side, you'll see 2020 tax, total tax before exemption. This is where, all of your exemptions will be listed. Your homeowner exemption, your senior citizen exemption, senior freeze, disabled person, disabled veteran, returning veteran, all of them will be listed here. The only one that will not be listed here is the long-time exemption. On the right-hand side of your tax bill, you can't see it because of the way the graphic is set up. There's a portion that says important messages. That's where your long time would be listed. Automatic renewals. Going forward, As of last year, the homeowner, the senior, and the senior freeze are all automatically renewed for this year. So if you applied for them last year, they did show up, or they should have shown up on your tax bill for this year. If you are interested in checking the information on your property, when the bills were paid, how much was paid, which exemptions are you receiving, what's the appeal history on your property, you definitely want to check out this website right here. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a second so you can take a screenshot, or for you to go ahead and write it down, but it's cookcountypropertyinfo.com. We also want to make a note that the deadline for exemptions was April 9th of 2021. What happens if you missed an exemption? I was just on the phone with somebody yesterday with this, a certificate of error. So as of this moment right now, we can go back up to 3 years to receive or to apply for discounts that you may have forgotten to apply for. Maybe you didn't know you qualified for them. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is contact our office and we will look at this for you. We can do 2020, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. On the right-hand side, you'll see a reassessment notice. Again, this is not a tax bill. As Scott said earlier, this is just letting you know what our office believes your property is worth. If you agree, then there's nothing for you to do here tonight. If you disagree, then the next part is for you. Earlier, we spoke about a calendar for your townships. So I'm going to leave this on the screen for one quick second. Go ahead and take a screenshot or go ahead and write it down. It's cookcountyassessor.com/assessment calendar and deadlines. This is where you would go to see where your township was, if your township is open, and if you can appeal when your deadline is. All of that information is available here. And I'm pretty sure that link is going to be in the comment section as well, or the chat box, sorry. To find comparable properties, this is a brand new tool that we have, cookcountyassessor.com. What are comparable properties with hyphens in between everything? This is brand new. This is revolutionary, guys. This is going to make it super easy for those of you who want to provide comparable properties. Now, please note, you don't have to provide our office with comparable properties. However, we understand that there are some of you all that want to do that for peace of mind. You have every right to do so. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So when you go to file an appeal, this is the screen that you will see. Each tab has its own set of questions. Each tab is self-explanatory. You just have to fill out the information. But what we want to draw your attention to are the 2 circled portions. Now, some of you all might have additional pins. That means you have a prorated property. That means you have one property with more than one PIN number. If that is you, then you want to go ahead and put in your additional PIN number where it says attached pins. Anything else you want to submit, a narrative, pictures, sales reports, an appraisal, anything like that, you definitely want to put that where it says attachments. I would just caution you to be aware of where you are, what you are uploading where, because some of these size limits are different. Some are 25 megabytes, some are 5 megabytes, some are 10. So just so you know what you're uploading and when you're uploading it. Lastly, our website is cookcountyassessor.com. Our phone number is 312-443-7550. Guys, we are socially active, so you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. We respond back to our messages every single day. So if you don't contact us via the phone number or our website, you can definitely contact us via social media. So now I'm going to pass it back over, and we are going to get into my favorite part of the night, the Q&A.
All right, so we do have a few questions in the Q&A. So I'll kind of pitch these between Hector and I think will be the folks to answer them. So the first question we got was in the assessment letter, it states you can find a list of current assessments in your area in the Reporter on August 28th, in El Dia and La Prensa de Chicago on August 26th. And that person would like to view that list. So those are in those newspapers. You'll have to actually go and get the actual paper, the hard copy that's out, that came out on those dates earlier this week. If for whatever reason you missed those though, I would recommend two things. One, go to the data menu, then go to valuation reports, click on Jefferson Township, and you can actually look at all the different assessed value data that we file on these reports, and you can compare your assessment to other folks. You can see how your market value compares to other folks. You can see whether you believe that you are in that kind of median range. So I would recommend going online and looking at that. You can also do a property search online if you want to compare your property to other similar properties. So let's say you want to look at anyone within your particular neighborhood code that has a particular type of house like yours. You can actually get a list of those and see all the different assessments for those as well. So if you missed those newspapers and for some reason you don't want to go outside and you don't want to go out into a store right now, you can look up all that information online to do some comparables on your assessed value. So the next question in there was about the estimated market value. The amount of the buyer would pay for the property depends on the condition of the interior. And so obviously we're not coming in your house to assess your property. So we may not know some of those interior conditions. And so Hector, I think this question is good for you. This person says they haven't done any major renovations. They don't believe that their property is worth as much as the estimated market value listed on their assessment because there hasn't been any kind of updates or renos of their property. We often get this question, you know, my house hasn't anything done to it, but I know that there's other homes that have similar characteristics, but those are super new houses. So what proof would they want to submit on their claim as part of their appeal to let us know about what the condition is of the property inside, and do they need an appraisal for that?
Awesome. So one, I just want to state this is not legal counsel by any means. However, if I were you, I would submit pictures, right? Your argument is, hey, my home, for lack of better words, is not as updated as everyone else's. My home is not as nice as everyone else's. I still have a kitchen from 1932 or whatever the case is, right? So I would take pictures. How do you do that? With a cell phone. You can take those pictures from a cell phone and then you can upload them onto our website. Let me get back there very quickly. Right here where it's asking for attachments. This is where you will upload that information. You could also have a sales analysis. You could also have an appraisal. But if it were me, I would submit pictures and proof that my home is not similar in any way to these new homes that are being appraised at a much higher value.
Okay. And they also want to know a little bit more about that long-term homeowners exemption. I think you did talk about that. I'm going to also post a link in the chat for the long-time homeowners exemption, because I think, you know, a lot of folks, you want to first be able to review all those different characteristics for that exemption and figure out whether you qualify or not. So I'm going to answer this one just by posting a link in the chat. Folks can go there if they think they may qualify. Now, most folks are going to say, you know, I've lived in my home for a really long time. That means I'm a long-time homeowner. And that's not necessarily the case, right? That's and so how is that? What is the thing to keep in mind about the long-time homeowners exemption?
For sure. So if you guys are still looking at the screen, give me a quick second. On your tax bill, bottom left-hand corner, tax calculator, there's a number here. It is called the 2020 Equalized Assessed Value. It's abbreviated EAV. Your EAV from 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Those 10 years has to have increased significantly. Now, what does that mean? It all just depends on what township you actually live in. Anyone who qualified for this exemption received the application from our office. However, I would love to sit up here and say our office is perfect, but that is not the case. So if you feel like you qualify, just go ahead and contact us. We will run your PIN number. This literally takes 30 seconds, and we will let you know why you do, and we apologize, or why you don't qualify for your exemption. But it's an actual mathematical equation.
And I want to kind of note that, going back to that other question, we do get a lot of questions about people who say, I have an appraisal, can I submit that as part of my appeal? Obviously, you can do that. That's an important piece of evidence. If you have a recent sales transaction, that can be important too. An important thing to keep in mind, though, is the idea about assessments is not to get your home to the actual dollar amount that you may have recently purchased your home for. We're trying to assess your property based on other homes similar to yours. So you may have been a very motivated buyer, and maybe your seller was, as motivated to sell as you were to buy. And so maybe that affected the sale price. So sale prices can fluctuate for lots of reasons, but we ultimately try to figure out what the general average market value, average is right, what the general market value is for homes like yours. So the next question we have here is from Sylvia. My house is almost 120 years old. Why did my property assessment go up 100%? Hector, what would be some reasons why that might happen for somebody that's got an older home? What would we be looking at?
For sure. So the first thing I would do is make sure you're receiving all of the discounts you qualify for, right? You can do this by looking at the bottom left hand of your tax bill where it says tax calculator. Your exemptions should be listed. It would read homeowner, X amount of dollars, senior citizen, if you qualify, X amount, all listed there. If they are not listed there, I would definitely contact our office for a certificate of error. If it is listed there, then maybe your value increased. Maybe there was something done, or maybe it was brought up to date. But to make this easier, just inbox us your PIN number and we will definitely take a look at it.
Okay. And we're getting a bunch of questions about condos in the area. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that your property value for a condo is also going to depend on the percentage of ownership. And that's not something that owners are often aware of when they're purchasing the home. And as much as market value is a good indicator of the value, that percentage of ownership also matters quite a bit too. So if you're a condo owner, it's important that you talk to your condo association about your options for appeal. Oftentimes, and Hector, I think you probably have some more detail on this, condo associations sometimes will have the entire building appeal. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so sometimes condo associations have an attorney on retainer that does this for them. But like Scott said earlier, for condos, what you want to focus on is on the percentage of ownership. Just because there are 4 units or 10 units doesn't mean that we're all equally divided. Specifically, these percentage of ownerships are established by the developer, whoever built the property, and then they're in your constitution, your articles of declaration inside the condo. And then if that was never changed, they're going to be exactly what the developer created. So I would encourage anyone to look at that information, see what your percentage of ownership is, make sure everything is correct, and talk to the attorney that's on retainer.
Okay, so next question. My property also had no kitchen and bath renovations since before 1950, and most of the infrastructure, plumbing, and electric are original to the 1920s. It would sell as a gut rehab and cannot be compared to recent sales of buildings that have already had gut rehabs. Is this a basis for appeal? How do I show condition? Hector, I think this is kind of what you were referring to before about the importance of photos
Absolutely.
for an
Go ahead
appeal.
and take pictures of all of that and submit it and upload it.
And when you're in the online appeal section, you can actually, there are different tabs. There is a tab called attachments, and there is an area specifically under attachments that allows you to upload photos. Now, if you go to our website, you can go to cookcountyassessor.com. There is a big menu labeled appeals, and everything you need to know for appeals is in there. My suggestion would be to go to the appeal online area. And first of all, you can watch a video that shows the, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just share this out because I think it's an important resource here. You can look at a video about an online appeal. It tells you what kind of information you will need before you start your appeal. It'll also tell you how to find the results of your appeal. Now, if you're all set at that point, you can launch the online portal here. But if you like, we also have some pretty extensive guides for how to file an appeal. Now, some people are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to read a 50-page PDF about appeals. The good news is it's mostly pictures. We have a lot of screenshots in there so that you can kind of follow along in the appeals process. So don't get freaked out. It's not 50 pages of words. It's 50 pages of mostly pictures and some words. But that's under the appeals section. And then you just go to appeal online. You can also look at an overview of appeals. Some of the questions that we're answering here tonight are on this page. So if you got a lot out of this presentation and you're talking to your neighbors who have some questions about appeals, first of all, we're recording this session. We're also putting it live on YouTube. So people can go to YouTube and check that out. If you search for Cook County Assessor's Office on YouTube, folks can watch this presentation again. But let's say they don't want to sit through a video from the assessor's office, they can go directly to the appeal overview section and you can get all kinds of frequently asked questions answered here. So those are two important things to keep in mind. All right, let's go to the next question and I'll pull that up. And we're looking at somebody who says that their property value is listed at $669,000. The property next to theirs sold for $550,000 as a tear down. It was identical to theirs, same build and layout. Would this be an example as a perfect comp? Could it be a part of an appeal? Yes, and that's a good example of an appeal. It may not be though that you're going to get pegged exactly at that sale price. There's a concept in assessments called sales chasing. And what that means is what we don't want is to take the exact sale price on the market and peg every other house that matches those characteristics at that sale price. Because again, you might be a very motivated buyer, or maybe you have a motivated seller. So maybe that sale price is a little bit above average or a little bit below average. It's why when we're doing assessments and modeling, we have a sales database, sometimes as big as about 30,000 prices in the area. And it's not just in your neighborhood, but we look at other similar homes in other parts of Chicago similar to yours. We do that to try to average out the home values as much as possible so that we don't accidentally, what you wouldn't want for us is for us to take a sales price that was too high. We wouldn't want us to say, oh, you know what, there was somebody that just believed their home was the best home ever and they couldn't sell it unless it was at a specific price. And for whatever reason, that very motivated buyer decided they were going to pay a little above market for that. We wouldn't want to necessarily peg everybody else's home price to that out of market sale price. So it's one of the reasons why we tend to look at a bunch of different sales. Let's go on to the next question. What is the connection between assessed value and estimated property value? Hector, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so when you say estimated property value, I'm assuming you mean the market value. So the market value is X and the assessed value is 10% of that. So the easiest way to do this math is just add a 0 to your assessed value or remove a 0 from your market value.
Yeah, there's two things to keep in mind with assessed value and market value. So one, assessed value is 10% of your market value as a residential homeowner. Now, commercial property owners are at 25%. Their assessed value is 25% of their market value. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I just want to note real quickly here, we only have Hector until 7 o'clock. So he is going to bow out. I am going to stay though and answer the rest of these questions. And so I'm going to answer any other questions that come up. So have no fear, we'll try to get to all these questions. One quick tip though, if you have a question that I have not gotten to yet, please put it in the Q&A box. And I say that because the chat box is a little hard to keep up with. The Q&A box that I see is a lot easier to keep track of the questions. So if you put something in the chat that I haven't received yet and you want to get an answer to it, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box because that'll make sure that I see it and it won't get lost in the big scroll. I am going to take one real quick thing out of the chat box though, because I think it's really interesting. Susan asked, in the valuation report for your neighborhood code, there were very few sales for her particular neighborhood code, and most of those were luxury homes, which totally twisted up the assessment. So we'll get to, there's a real good point in there that I'll get to, but her question is, don't you have photos of the luxury homes with which you compared my home? So great question. We do have photos that we use of those luxury homes, but we don't always see inside them. We don't generally have those photos. First of all, that's a tough thing to source. Where you see those photos is realtors usually put that information online in something called the MIS system. So that is some data that we're working on getting. So that would mean we would have interior photos. It's all what we consider great data, but we don't have a subscription to that yet. It's something we're working on. We hope to have it very soon. Once we get that, we think that's going to really improve the data that we use for residential property values. So we don't have it yet, but let's go back to the question that Susan didn't ask that I think is inside that question, which is, if you see a limited number of sales within your neighborhood code, and neighborhood code is something that's printed on your assessment notice, it's not what we think of when we think of neighborhoods, right? We think in Chicago, we think of neighborhoods like, Lincoln Square or Lakeview or Rogers Park, Jefferson Park. When we talk about a neighborhood code, that's literally a numeric code within your township that denotes a certain sort of block by block area. So if you are doing a comp search, a comparable search in your neighborhood code, and you don't see any good comparables, they don't match your neighbor bedrooms, they don't match your bathrooms, maybe the square footage is wrong, then all you have to do is just go and look in the maps that we post online at Data Evaluation Reports. Go look at the maps, see which neighborhood codes are near yours, and you can use those nearby neighborhoods in order to do comps. I know most people say you should have comps within the same neighborhood code, and ideally, that's exactly what you should do. But if you don't see a good comp within your neighborhood, it's okay for you to look outside of your neighborhood code for that. All right, back into the Q&A. I'm taking the next question from Anne. She gave her PIN here. Can you see if we qualify for the long-time homeowner? We lived here 13 years. So an important thing to keep in mind with a long-term homeowners exemption is if you qualify, we send you something in the mail that says, we think you qualify for long-time homeowners exemption based on the way your assessed value has changed. And if you got that packet, I hope that you send it back because we want to make sure you get your long-term homeowners exemption. If for whatever reason, though, maybe you think you saw it, but maybe you threw it out, you can look online to see if you qualify, or you can either contact our office by email or by phone. If you didn't get one, only 2% of the people in Cook County actually qualify for the long-time homeowners exemption. So it's likely that you don't qualify. And if you'd like, you can DM me your email or your phone number. Don't put it in the public chat. We don't want a bunch of people bothering you. But you can go ahead and send me a direct message. Or if you're on social media, you can send the office a direct message on Facebook. Just look us up at Cook County Assessor or Cook County Assessor's office on Facebook, and we can look that up for you to determine if you have received the long-time homeowners exemption. We'll just need to look it up and get back to you. Okay, next question. My assessed value went up by 100% in the last 5 years with no upgrades. Property value has increased by 5% this time. I'm not sure why there's a discrepancy between assessed value and property value. So it may be that we are looking at different aspects of your home, and we are seeing something in there that we think tracks with other homes in the area that caused their assessment to go up. Just because you didn't do anything to your home doesn't mean that other properties like yours didn't have price increases themselves. And that ultimately is what we look at when it comes to figuring out the assessed value of your homes. Okay, a question from Michael. If this will increase my taxes next year, did all residentials receive a 20% increase this year? Great question. So we can't predict what the actual impact is going to be on the tax bill. But what I can tell you is what we've been seeing is about between a 12 to 20% increase on most residential home values. And that's that average. That's that median. Some went up a lot more. Some housing types were more popular than others in the big sales boom that was happening at the end of last year. So you may have gone up more than that. We did have a couple people here who said their assessment went up 100% in the last 3 years, and that's possible. But we don't really know what the effect on tax bills is going to be. But if your assessment went up 20%, that's actually pretty common this year. particularly in Chicago and in other parts of the country. Okay, Ross asked, do appeals by lawyers do better than do-it-yourself appeals? Well, here's what I'll say. An appeal is only as good as the information in it. And the person who knows your home the best is you. It's not me. It's not necessarily even the other people in our office. And it's certainly not a lawyer that you would hire, especially if you've never met him. So you know your home best. You know the great things that are great about your home, and maybe you know some of the things that are not so great about your home. You can tell us that in an appeal. You can give us photos. You can do all that online. You don't have to even leave your house. You can do it all for free, and you do not need a lawyer. There is no data suggesting that appeals by lawyers do better than appeals by the average homeowner. And there is no incentive for you to hire a lawyer to do it unless you just, for whatever reason, decided you don't want to be bothered with the process of appeal. But what I will say is I think we've made it a lot easier to file an appeal with the office. I would say it probably takes about 20 minutes to half an hour. If you really want to use a lawyer, the main advantage is just time. You know, everyone's dealing with extra stuff right now. There are a lot of other, concerns that people have. Kids are going back to school. People are going back into the workplace. They may or may not want to take on the whole appeal process. And we understand that. You have the right to representation if you choose so. But we've tried to make the online appeal process a lot easier. So you don't need to hire a lawyer for your appeal. There are no natural advantages of using a lawyer for an appeal process. Next question comes from Michelle. The comparable property finder tells me there are no comps in my area, which cannot be true. Any suggestions how to use the tool effectively? You know, it's possible that you may have a very different kind of home from other folks. So I would suggest maybe making some adjustments to that comp finder. If you're using the one that's within the appeal tool, you might want to just change some of the different characteristics you're using within the comp finder. We will be posting a complete guide to the comp finder very soon. We actually just put the new comp finder tool that's in the appeals online over the last couple weeks. There's also a comp finder tool that you can use by going to Cook Viewer, and there's more information about that in the appeal online section of our website that I talked about before. Okay, let's take a couple more questions here. Can you dispute past assessments? No. If you have an assessment from before, you cannot dispute it except if there is a factual error. So for example, let's say you filed an appeal this year and you filed that based on incorrect information. Let's say we got your square footage wrong by 1,000 feet, something crazy like that. If that appeal is successful, what you can do is file for a certificate of error to correct your 2018 assessed value. So that would be the only case in which an assessment can be disputed. If you have won an appeal based on incorrect property information, you can file a certificate of error to correct the previous appeal based on that new factual information. Okay, question from Sarah. Is it best to use comparable sales in your appeal from MLS or comp search of assessments from CCAO for 2021? So I think what this is asking is, is it better to use sales or sort of overvaluation comparisons? You can use both. I think both are a really relevant thing to say, but if you've got somebody else that's assessed at a lower value than you and it's an identical home, that's a pretty good comp for you to include. But again, if you see other comparable sales in your area, you might want to add those as well. So in this case, it's kind of a yes and, not an either or. Where can you send PIN information regarding the discrepancy between class code online and the letter we received? So Beth, I would suggest, again, DMing me and we can get that information from you and then we can contact you. So please send me a private message within this chat. And we can get that corrected for you. That way I've got your contact information and we can follow up with you tomorrow. Can you compare a 2-flat building that's been converted to luxury condos? You can compare a 2-flat to a building that's been converted to luxury condos, but depending on the condition of the 2-flat, those luxury condos might not be the best comp. So consider if you believe that property is comparable to yours in terms of the type of quality that it is. If you have an older 2-flat and you're comparing to luxury condos, those might be assessed at a higher value than your 2 flat. So somebody asked about the 10% market value on market value versus assessed value. So your market value of your property as a residential homeowner is one particular value. Then for taxation purposes, we take 10% of that market value, and that is considered your assessed value. And that is the figure that we use in the property tax system to help determine what your property taxes are. I know it's a complicated system. I really wish it wasn't. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link in the chat right now that talks about the differences between your assessed value and your tax bill, and how that 10% assessed value is used to calculate your tax bill. And I think that'll help kind of answer that question, because maybe that's just me, but when I can actually read through things and take some more time with it, I find it's a little more helpful. I'm going to go to the next question. Current tax bill is not showing exemptions. We were told we would get those without having to reapply. So that's a great question. So a lot of folks were expecting that their exemptions would be auto renewed this year, and almost a lot of people were. But as part of the auto renewal process, the state requires us to audit some folks. And I know audit is a scary word, but we basically means we check our data to make sure that we think that you still will qualify for that exemption. And so if you were flagged for that, we sent you a booklet and said, hey, we would really like you to re-verify this information so that we make sure that you still qualify for the exemption. A lot of folks sent those booklets in, some folks did not. And so if you didn't send that booklet in, your exemption might not be on your tax bill. I'm going to show you right now how to fix that problem by going to our website. So here's our website. The place you want to go is under exemptions. You click on exemptions and go to certificates of error. Click on certificates of error, and you can read about what a certificate of error is. A certificate of error is really just a fancy way of saying that there was a mistake on your tax bill and you didn't get the exemption that you were entitled to. And so all you need to do is fill out a certificate of error for the type of exemption that you have. So you can see all this information here, how you apply for certificate of error exemptions. There are links to it all here. You can apply online. If you missed it for a previous year, maybe you were entitled to the senior freeze last year and you didn't get it, you can apply for a 2019 certificate of error. You can also apply for exemptions for persons with disabilities, returning veterans, or veterans with disabilities. So again, go to the exemptions menu, click on it, get a drop-down menu that says certificates of error, and you can apply for that online. You can also download a form if you know a local senior who is having trouble getting those exemptions. You can also give them one of the forms and they can fill that out as well. All right, going back to our Q&A. So a question about where do you see the neighborhood code? On the letter, it has class code, assessment region, but not the neighborhood code. So I believe that should be on there. Let's see if we can come up with an example. I'm going to do a quick search to come up with some properties in Jefferson Township. Because usually what I do is I just pull up a property that I know well, but that's probably not going to be in your area. So here's those neighborhood codes we talked about. Obviously, you want to make sure that you can actually access those first. So I'm just going to skip that part. I'm going to get a list of properties here. Okay. So if you do the property search and you're looking at the details of your PIN, go to the characteristics area. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. This is listed right up the top, my mistake. So when you look up a particular home, the best way to do that, by the way, is just go to search and search by address. You can enter in, if you happen to know your PIN, you can enter it here, or you can just search by address. And then once you're looking at your property, here's like the basic information about your property, square footage for land, and this is your neighborhood code. Now I'll show you a map here in just a second that kind of corresponds to that. But somebody else in the chat had asked about what is the tax code? What does that mean in terms of location? Different areas of the township have different tax codes. What that means is there are specific taxing districts within that area that charge levies, and that's what your property taxes are based on. So another important thing that you'll want to look at is your tax code number, because that will help you understand which taxing districts are in your area and what your specific tax rate is. So I've got a neighborhood code. Now, I mentioned before that a great thing to do when you're looking at comps is to look at comps within your neighborhood code. So let's take a look at the assessment report for single family homes. There's a whole lot of data in here. We talked about that. This is even more than I showed you earlier. Scroll all the way down to the map for sale prices in your area. So this particular pin was neighborhood code 30. So let's find neighborhood code 30. I don't actually see neighborhood code 30 here, which is surprising. Oh, there it is. Found it. Okay, so it's up in the top right here. So if you're looking in this area, that's the sort of, what is that? The northeast area of Jefferson Township, and you don't see any comps, you'll want to look at areas where the median sale prices are roughly akin to yours. So it seems like neighborhood code 41 would be a good area to look for comps. You might also want to look in neighborhood code 071. That might also be another really good place for comps. Oh, looks like I was not sharing my screen, was I? That was a whole thing that I talked about and didn't share the screen. Sorry, folks. So here's that 030. That's what I was talking about earlier. This is the residential home report. And again, this is how you see what other nearby neighborhood codes are. 050 is right near there. 041 is another place where you'd be able to do that. I'm going to take you back though to different screen. So folks were asking about where you can find your neighborhood code. Once you do a search by address, and the best way to find that is to click on search and search by address. Once you enter in your address here, you'll get your PIN detail section, and your neighborhood code will be right there. It'll be in the top part of your PIN detail page. And you'll also see that tax code that I mentioned there. In order to see the different tax codes, what you need to do is go to the Cook County Clerk's website. All right, going back into the Q&A. So there's a question about with what somebody described as errors in the assessments. A question about will there be increased rents? Will that lead to a loss of rental units or homes that folks are being priced out of? And that's obviously a really important thing to think about. I would say that while we're certainly seeing some errors in assessments, we're usually able to correct those on the appeal process. And there isn't necessarily anything that says that increases in assessments are going to lead to significant increases in rents. For the most part, most property owners are getting the rent that they think the market will bear. And so they're not necessarily going to increase the rent over and above what they think the market can bear, even if they're trying to make up for an increase in taxes. But again, just because your assessment goes up a certain amount doesn't mean the taxes are going to necessarily go up the same amount. Can you apply for a homeowner's exemption if you bought your house in 2004? Again, it's based on the increase in your assessed value. You can go to our website and you can send us a note with your PIN, and we can look up the information about your home to determine whether or not you qualify for a longtime homeowner's exemption. So if you don't have exact comparable matches, what's the most important element to focus on? Square footage, age of building, class code. Great question. Square footage is a big one. Age of building is another good one. The classification code, so the type of building that it is, that's another important thing to keep in mind as well. I would say square footage, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms is another important one. Okay, so there's a question about taxes. Taxes went up 20% this year, not due to an assessment as that is next year. So I'm not entirely sure of the question on that one. I guess it's a question about taxes going up. And so you're in Chicago, you're expecting your assessment to go up or come out this year, but you had a tax increase last year. So taxes are not just a measure of assessments. Taxes can also go up because of the Chicago taxing districts increasing their levies. It's entirely possible that you're in an area where your levy increase. Maybe there is a taxing district that asked for more money this year than they did the previous year. And that may be why your taxes go up. Okay, how can a property that has no structure on it have the new assessed value more than doubled? That's a great question. The land value might have gone up. We may not know, though, that there is no longer a building on that property. So how do we not know that? Well, if there was a permit filed for a tear down on that property, but the permit didn't get to our office for some reason, we might not know that there's no building on that property anymore. If it's just vacant land, but there's no building on it, and we're putting on a building value, we may have bad data on that parcel. And that's a really good, important thing for an appeal. All right, continuing to ask some questions. Did the longtime homeowners exemption auto renew this year? It did not. Longtime homeowners exemption does not auto renew. If you did not get a booklet for an exemption that you think should have auto renewed, you can file for a certificate of error. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm sharing my screen this time, and I'm going to show you one more time how to find that. If you go to the exemption screen and then click on certificates of errors, that's the place where you can file for a missing exemption. I'm just going to keep that up for now. A person asked if taxing code and neighborhood code is the same. Those are two different things. Taxing codes usually have about 5 to 6 digits. Neighborhood code usually has about 2 to 3. Another question is, I have a 2-flat, which is converted to a single family home. Do I need to compare my property to another 2-flat, another 2-flat conversion, or a simple single family home? Best thing to do there would be to compare to other single family homes. If you can find another 2-flat conversion, that would be a great comp, but I know those are really difficult to find. Okay, the location for the neighborhood codes, again, I will go ahead and do that one more time. I know I was not sharing my screen, and again, I really apologize for that. It's been a while since that's happened. So let's look at a particular PIN. If you do the search by address, and again, you can go to search by address. Once you get that list of pins, just click on your pin. And on the main page, under tax details, you'll see all this information here. Neighborhood code is right here, and tax code is listed right here. Then the best thing to do is go to Data, Valuation Reports, go to Jefferson Township, and then click on the report for your type of property. If it's single family homes, multifamily, or condos. Let's look at single family. And what you want to do to find the maps is scroll all the way down to the bottom. You can look at median sale prices in your area based on your neighborhood code. And then we also have a list of all the different neighborhood codes, the number of single family properties or number of condo or multifamily properties, the most common type of property class in your area, the number of sales, median sale price, range of sale prices, all kinds of really good information. When someone was asking before about where do I find all the list of similar assessments, this is where that information is. So again, I'm going to just show you one more time how to find that. Go to Data, Valuation Reports, click on Jefferson Township, and then scroll down to the type of assessment report that you have, and then you can see that data there. All right, looks like we've got a couple more in the Q&A box. Oh, it looks like we're done with the Q&A. So I'll give folks a chance to drop any more Q&A they have in there. And I'll just review a couple things that are really important to know. So Jefferson Township, you are open for appeals until September 17th. A lot of folks ask, is that a certain point in the day? They ask maybe, is that midnight? So it's midnight on September 17th. So make sure that you get your appeal in by then. I'm going to screen share again, show you the best place to do that appeal. If you go to appeals and then select appeal online, you'll get a list of things to know before starting an online appeal. You can also watch a brief video. And you can launch the online appeal portal just by clicking on this button. You can also see some step-by-step guides on how to file appeals. And you can also look at the different types of properties you can file appeals on. We have some other kind of deep in the weeds information below that. But the most important information is going to be up top here. This is sort of your quick start guide. And then there's also a complete guide. Again, it's 50 pages long, but it is mostly pictures. So keep that in mind. Okay. So apologies again for the lack of the screen share. I think we did review that information. But apologies for that. I want to just wrap up by saying your appeals must be filed by September 17th. Please make sure to get those in. I also want to let you know that, if you think for whatever reason that your market value is over and above what you think your home can sell for, that's a really good reason to appeal. You can appeal based on your being overvalued compared to other homes in your area. You might have information wrong, or maybe there is a thing about the price of your home that you think we ought to know about, something going on in the interior. Maybe you have flood damage. Maybe somebody mentioned again, your home is settled in a particular way. That's all information that we need to know. So it's a really important thing to tell us in the appeal. So make sure to include photos, or a good way for us to see aspects of your home that we might not know about. So I want to thank everybody for hanging with us. I know we've got a couple summer nights left, and I know folks are probably have kids returning back to school. It's always a busy time, and I appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. I hope we answered all of your questions. I want to thank you for the great questions. Those are all really fantastic. And if you have other questions, I really encourage you to visit our website. We've done a lot of work over the past couple of years to put more information online and to make it easier to file an appeal online. Again, it is free. You do not need a lawyer. You are the person who knows your property best, and you can file your own appeal from the comfort of your own home. So thank you again for attending, and I hope we answer all of your questions. And if not, please go to our website, cookcountyassessor.com. Beth, thanks for posting your contact information. We'll check into that. And there was somebody else that had a question as well, so about that long time. So I copied that information down, and we'll send you some answers in the next couple days. Thanks to Commissioner Degnan, and thanks to Alderman Martin for hosting this seminar. And if you have any questions, I know you can always contact their offices. They are great partners in this work. Commissioner, I don't know if you had any final words you wanted to say to folks.
I just really appreciate all the time and energy you took to be here tonight. And I'm glad that the participants on the call got good information. And I encourage people to continue to reach out and tell your friends and neighbors about this webinar. I know it could be helpful for a lot of people. I know our office has had a lot of calls. Again, I'm at 773-283-7873. And if you need anything from property tax appeals help to anything else, we're always here to serve. So thanks, Scott, and thanks everybody for spending your time here tonight.
And a reminder, if anybody missed it and you want to pass the word along, tell them to go to our YouTube channel, look for Cook County Assessor's Office on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We're always doing video events like this. Anytime there's information about exemptions or certificates of error, we try to do a video about it. So it's a good thing to follow. Thanks again for your time. I've been Scott Smith with the Assessor's Office, and I hope all of you have a good evening.